We're live, I think. All right. Well, um, gosh, I just want to call you Fishy. I mean,
You can.
yeah, it's so cool. I mean, we've known each other since like elementary school. We're amongst the oldest of friends, and I feel so fortunate that I've been in this endeavor surrounded by some of my best friends, and Kelly has her kid in here, and Jesse has a kid, and Dan has a
Hmm.
kid. So it's really cool for me to be able to connect with those people.
Yeah, I am so glad to be here and to connect with you. And you can call me Fishy anytime because nobody at this period of my life calls me that. And it's just reminds me of the dear connection I had of such great
Yeah.
friends such as yourself. And I'm really excited that you are now an entrepreneur too.
Yes.
And thinking about how many of our people in our friend group, actually our immediate friend group, ended up being business owners. And that was never
Yeah.
part of my plan. I don't know about
No,
you,
it
but
it
here
was
we
it was
are.
not mine either. Yeah. It's funny too, people like Kelly's son Vincent, he calls me Jay. And like nobody calls me Jay now. I'm Jason or I'm
Oh yeah,
JP. But like
interesting.
only people from Wanta call me Jay. And now it's
Yeah.
adorable that Vincent's calling me Jay as
Oh,
well.
I
So
love that.
yeah, I love it. So welcome. Thank you for taking the time to be here.
Yeah, sure.
I absolutely would love it if people dropped questions into the chat if they wanted to, but at the same time, I got plenty to talk about. So this is super exciting. Yeah, we're both entrepreneurs.
Hmm.
I went into education thinking I would just be a teacher, and you went into the health mental health field thinking you'd probably be in practice. Did
Yeah.
you realize all of what that meant to kind of, did you realize the path that you would take? When did you realize that path?
You know, it's funny. I've been talking about this recently. So I actually knew from early on, like eighth grade. Remember we had to take those tests, and it was like
Yeah.
you'd be good in mental health. And I was like, ooh, I love people's stories, and I love the advice. And then I remember watching Silence of the Lambs, and I'm like, oh, people's minds are nuts. So I knew I wanted to be a psychologist. So that was always clear. But what I didn't know is like what I wanted to do within the field of clinical psychology. So I have evolved over time,
Yeah.
kind of, actualized, if you will. Where I started is very different from where I am
Yeah. Me too.
now, which is part of the growth process too. I mean,
Yeah.
again, what do you know?
So I guess the people that exist in this group that I've got going on probably don't know you at all. So maybe you can give a brief overview of your current practice and some of your philosophies to treatment, and then
Sure.
also some of the new exciting stuff you have going on.
Yeah, all right. So my name is Dr. Lauren Fisher. I'm a clinical psychologist and a co-owner of Delray Psych and Wellness here in Alexandria, Virginia. And also we have a West Coast office, Anacortes Psych and Wellness in Washington. And I own a holistic wellness center called the Wellness Junction. So I started off as an assessing psychologist in the beginning of my career. So I did, as you probably know, working with school systems, doing a lot of diagnosis and also mental health clarity. So for doctors, teachers, parts of IEPs, students, parents. So I worked a lot on the pathology side, if you will, and that was actually really exciting because it was helping to really differentiate and help identify for children or adults like the right direction and the type of treatment they needed. So I mean that's probably where I mostly, worked a lot more with executive functioning. And I used to work with kids and adolescents, but to be honest, I wouldn't say that was my strength. So, I ended up evolving and
Teens
moving
are
in.
hard.
Yeah, they
They're
are. I
hard.
like teens, little kids,
Yeah,
but yeah, they are. They're all are. And the
they're
parents,
hard.
well, and I mean, if I'm going to be honest, yeah, I mean, I work in all different settings. I just was seeing some really bad stuff. And I'm like, I got to work with those parents before they have kids.
Yeah.
So I started, and that was before I even like became a trauma therapist. I didn't plan on that either, but so over time with my own mind body healing, I began to do a little bit more mind body practice, moving away from assessment and into mindfulness and somatic, and it just kind of grew from there. So, I mean, what I would say right now is I describe myself as a holistic, trauma-based therapist that uses an integrative approach. So I'll use a lot of somatic, mind, body, and spirit techniques. So anything from cognitive interventions to trauma, body, nervous system regulation. That's a big piece of it. um, and psychedelics. So I also recently have, started to use that for advanced healing, and that has been pretty cool in the neuroscience perspective
Yeah,
as well.
that's a fast growing field.
Hmm.
Yeah,
It is the wave of the future. So, and
that's
it's a
great
good
that
wave.
you're on the front of it. Yeah. Um, what is it that the psychedelics do for the brain that is so beneficial?
Yeah, what's super cool about and I work with ketamine because it's legal. Um, it works on the glutamate system, so more than like 50% of people on antidepressants are not benefiting from the actual medicines that we currently have. So this works on a different part of your system. What's really neat about it, aside from like immediate antidepressant and anti-anxiety impacts, like immediate, that it heals neural pathways that have been damaged over time, and it creates like significant neuroplasticity. So,
Mm,
so within these like window of 2 days to like 14 days, like your brain's like wet cement. You know how like we know if we repeat things over and over, we'll have a habit, but this just sort of like makes it a lot easier and a lot
wow.
faster. So that's like the really kind of exciting part. But also there's other things. They call it perspective medicine. It gets you out of like, it shuts down your thinking brain to kind of see what you need to see, like your what I believe is your truth, like that you're worthy, you're lovable. It often restores a sense of safety for people who have had their
Mm,
nervous system disrupted over time. So some people are feeling a sense of safety they've never felt in their entire life.
mm.
And a lot of interesting things happen in the psychedelic space too, spiritually also.
Yeah, yeah. I will say I'm familiar, and maybe not under a professional's
Mhm.
guidance, which would be a lot more safe and productive, I would assume. But I do understand the neuroplasticity that becomes available, and
Yeah.
it certainly has shaped my worldviews and some of those experiences. So I definitely see. Now, you said
Yeah.
something that was really interesting to me because you talked about shutting down the thinking brain to allow you to see the truth. Yet
Yeah.
I spend so much time working with kids, when they're stuck in the reptilian brain and their adrenaline's pumping, I want them to actually stop feeling and think for a second and bring it into
Yes.
this like, the third eye space, if you will, where they can open up and see things as they are, as opposed to feeling everything. And to me, that is thinking. Can you explain the difference between
Yes.
the two approaches?
Well, I think you're doing exactly what you're supposed to be doing in that
Good.
case, right? Because, like, right, if you can't regulate, you can't think, right? So, but for trauma, and most people are having parts or younger parts of them and are holding on to some unexpressed emotion or pain at some point. Obviously, some people have uh, bigger experiences than others. And what happens is we develop so many defenses that guard against that, right? So, like, let's say you have a over-functioning perfectionist part, right? Because that part doesn't want you to fail because there's a part of you that like believes, or it was dangerous to fail or not
Hmm.
do something right.
Hmm.
And so in this case, those defenses, like a lot of times in therapy, we'll just be managing the defenses. People are like, and that's what I used to do. Like, here's your anxious. How do you like manage your anxiety, right? Or how do you manage the perfectionist? And we could change it a little bit, but the pattern kept going, or the pattern wasn't changing. So at that point, like we're looking like, why is that pattern so rigid? And often when you track back through the body, there is a root cause. And so we want to quiet all those voices. We get a lot of voices in our head,
Hmm.
you know. It's true. We have multiple personalities. It's only a problem if they don't know about each other.
Hmm.
Um,
If they don't
so
deal with each other.
yeah, so
Yeah.
it's hard work. That I just say that the trauma piece, and this is where I think it's more important, is to some degree, and I'll come back to how it can be helpful for ADHD. But for the trauma piece, it allows you to do that work is very hard work because you have to be able to tolerate a certain level of emotion.
Discomfort. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, discomfort. And there are amazing like therapeutic techniques that help people build toward that. But the reality is we're in a emotional avoidant world and
Yeah.
country and
Yeah. We're
generation.
seeping the cheap fix of the dopamine hit on the phone all the time, right?
Yeah, yeah. I do think our generation's like the one that's the recovering generation that is really like opening the door for
Yeah.
children and the next few. Anyway, whatever I'm saying, not to go on a tangent. But what is also so it's really helpful in that case, we want those thinking parts to be down so we can access in a more comfortable way the things that need to be dealt with so we can rewire, express the emotions and be able to rewire the thinking. So, but what it does do with that connection back to like self and quieting, it really actually helps with ADHD, with presence and connection. So, I don't know, I'm sure you know this, but I was actually looking through some notes before about ADHD and the window of tolerance. And it was interesting. It was saying for kids, like the window of tolerance, like where they're actually in that zone of connection and
Yeah.
decision making is like a lot smaller
Short.
than,
Yeah.
yeah. And the other person, so the rotation, I was like, oh, okay, that explains my entire life up to this day.
Yeah. Well, you shared a little bit about the self-diagnosis, and I remember taking Psych 101 in college, and my professor was like, "Now you guys are going to read the DSM, and you're
Yeah,
going to diaghnose yourself with everything."
everything.
And sure as daylight, I did. Um, but
Wait,
you were
what'd you diagnose yourself with? What's
generalized anxiety disorder.
okay.
Yeah. And I mean, currently I'm on a dose of Zoloft that I would not like to be on forever, you
Yeah, I
know.
understand.
But it's helping me through a tough time, so I'm willing to admit that,
Mm-hmm.
there are lots of things that lots of people deal with. Um,
Absolutely.
but that being said, you kind of struggled, and Jesse too was so interesting when I interviewed him too. He had a similar connection where it's like we were all such good students, like,
Mhm.
but yet we just powered through it, and at what sacrifice to our well-being
Yeah.
and and then we went to college, and there was like the rubber band effect where like we had to face the realities of things that were struggling. So talk a little bit about your self-discovery, if you will.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of funny in hindsight. Like, all right, like I think I actually like basically once I started diagnosing everybody, I was like, oh, I'm like, yo, yowzers, that's me. And to know that I struggled, okay, so I knew in the beginning in elementary school, like in the first and second grade, I got pulled out for like some delays in reading, math, and whatever. Apparently, my mom told me later they were like, she'll never graduate high school. Like,
Oh my
can you
gosh.
imagine, right?
You're a doctor.
I
Come
know.
on.
So, but I do remember the sixth grade, like, remember, like, deciding because my brother was like smart and I was like, I want to be a good student. So I made a decision then. And I think that's important because I've always been motivated, but I always had to work. I feel 10 times harder than everybody else. Like, I couldn't sit in class. You know how many notes I passed with Kelly? And like, I was passing notes all the time. Like, I
Yeah.
could not listen unless I was super, super interested, right? And
Hyper
so
focus, yes.
yeah, it shouldn't happen that much. So paying attention was always an issue, but I'd go home and I would just work for hours on hours. So
Mm.
I'd have to read, write, highlight, audio it, like, and I was great at memorizing, so I could be very good at tests. So I say all that because I laugh and I know that I think I finished. We were all in that like, top 10% of the grade,
Yeah.
but I'm always like, oh, I faked it. I just got through. Like, I'm not as smart as them. And so, like,
Hmm.
comparing myself always to the rest of you, and I just felt like, oh, they get it so much easier. They're just so smart. So that anxiety, but I like probably kept that inside because I was like, I don't remember you being anxious, but I was like always anxious
Yeah.
um, about performance and things of that nature.
Yeah.
And the same thing went through until like went through college and grad school, and I was still like, oh my God, how did they give me a doctorate? I do not deserve this. They're gonna find out the truth. Finally shed that, thank God, like about like 10,
That's
15
good.
years ago. Yeah.
You are worthy, absolutely.
Yeah, but you have this like self-concept and discount. But anyway, what was happening when I first started working, and I can hyper focus really well. What was getting me was writing these reports. I had to write those psychological
Yeah.
evaluations and the sitting down to like do it and then the actual like length of expression. So I got started getting in these cycles of like, avoidance, being
Yeah.
late,
And then it
hiding,
piles up.
shame cycle, trying to
Yeah.
like, oh, you didn't get it. I sent this. I sent it. I didn't send it, and I'm like just lying.
Oh,
So it was pretty awful. So,
yeah.
like, I decided, well. pretty quickly, I talked to a doctor and started some medicine, and that was the first time. I was also dealing with a lot of anxiety at the time because that was a really toxic workplace. First job out
Mm,
in the real world. That was awesome.
yeah.
So it was a little bit of both, but for sure, I've been on some variation of ADD medicine for the last, what, 20 years.
Oh,
For last year, I was off, which was interesting. But that has helped. And I'd say, I also dealt with a lot of the just under arousal, like getting going in the morning, like getting my
yeah.
brain on track and all that. Ugh.
Yeah, because like what you're talking about is a little bit of the task initiation and like the focus. That was the reports, but I'm also really interested in that intersection with emotional regulation, and
Mm-hmm.
because a lot of times kids will come to me in the program and they'll struggle with like outbursts or things like that, and I always remind the families I'm not a doctor. My job is not to heal, but I'm a
Yeah.
coach, and I think if we turn our attention to um, the patterns that you feel in your body,
Mm-hmm.
and you have a strategy for if then if I so to
Yes.
me that's executive functioning. um, but how do you see the intersection between emotional well-being and executive functioning?
Well, the Dan Siegel like hand model
Yeah.
with the brain, right?
Yep.
And it's like this is the emotion, this is the prefrontal cortex, and they're all getting along well. And the emotions are this, right? You're flipping the lid. And so, to your point, that emotion needs to be addressed, right? And we have to understand, are we like overstimulated or like understimulated? Are we in fight or flight, or are we in shutdown? And this is really important that you're teaching and coaching your students on this because they have to become it's in their best interest to become aware of like
Awareness.
where
Yes.
they are, and because the strategy is gonna that's gonna depend on the strategy, right? So like when people are, yeah, in a hyper arousal state, for some people, and this is one of my big revelations in the last year or two, I would just be like, oh, everyone needs to like ground and breathe. But actually, sometimes when you're in a hyperactive state, you got to like move that energy and like
Yeah.
shake it and like,
Release it.
yeah. So actually teaching people to ask them like, what does my body need? So if they need to like move it and like, like just 2 to 3 minutes of like some type of somatic exercise will shift your state if people are willing to stick with that.
Yeah.
So they may need that grounding to bring down or they may need to move and shake, right? Or breathing, so that's why people experiment. And then on the other side, if you're shut down and you got to activate your body.
Yeah.
So, right, so you may need to move, you may need to put yourself in an ice cold shower because that'll do it. Um,
Yeah.
you
I
know,
definitely I definitely went through a period of time where the last part of my shower was making it as cold as I could make it for as long as I could.
ugh,
And it helped
hated
me.
it.
I dealt with some heavy stuff, and
Yeah,
it helped me to move through that time.
that's
Um,
awesome.
yeah, it was good. But what about these kids who can't, like, I deal with so many of them, like you said, the under arousal kids who cannot get up in the morning. It is just like it is the
Mm.
worst thing in the world is getting out of bed. And I say things like, well, just put your alarm across the room. And then the kid says to me, well, if I did that, I'd have to get out of bed. I'm like,
Yeah,
yes, exactly. But
yeah,
like, what is like that? Because I go back to logic. That's just kind of how I see the world. And so
yeah.
I just go back to like, okay, well, tell yourself, like, I'm not going to rationalize. When the alarm goes up, I'm going to get out of bed. Like, I'm just going to do it. And like, the thinking is the problem, because for me the thinking, then you start to rationalize to yourself and you make excuses and you say it'll be fine, I have more time. But how do like what would you recommend as like a activating, like a recommendation for the kid who can't get up in the morning? Like how can they activate?
I want to be like, I'm still that kid. I I'm still figuring that out for myself.
So is the answer that it's okay to struggle to activate in the morning? Like, just know that about yourself
Yes,
and don't be a morning
yes.
person.
Yeah. Apparently I'm sort of angry in the morning too, I'm told, as I'm getting out of bed. I mean, I was like, my husband will wake up and he's like, all right, I'm good to go. And I'm like, I don't understand your brain, right? So, you know, I'm sure there's some probably adolescent therapists are going to have better ideas than I, but I think you're on the right track with activation. It is the because if I can get up and get out of bed and get moving, I'm on
Yeah.
my way, right? But the minute I hit that snooze, forget it.
Yes. Yes. It's and that snooze is not, it's not a decision. It's happening like, it's like on a reptilian level. It's like stimulus response, like,
Yeah.
just, I'm not yet thinking, I'm just turning it off.
It all depends. Sometimes I am thinking, sometimes I'm not, right? So it's like always trying to understand that like the sleep varies too, right? Like sometimes you're in that
Yeah.
pure primal state, and then others I'm like, I can sleep a few more minutes. It's another few minutes, and then a few minutes becomes like 20
Yeah.
minutes. Um, so I don't know. I remember my mom used to, she was ahead of her time. She used to pour like cold water on my face.
Oh,
And I'd be
really?
like,
Get you out of bed in the morning.
yeah.
Yeah.
What did she
See,
know that
these kids
was
don't even know
late?
this gentle parenting stuff.
Exactly, no
They don't
kidding.
even know. All
Sheets being pulled off, yeah.
right.
But you
We're
know
gonna
what also gets me out is sense of urgency, right? If I know I have to be somewhere, I'll go. So
Yeah.
when I hate
Well,
that,
that's
how
a
I
part of the
function.
problem. A lot of the kids I work with are homeschooled, to
Mm,
some extent. They're in some alternative school environment. If they're not homeschooled, they're like dual enrollment. They're doing something in
yeah,
college. A lot of these kids have not fit the traditional mold, so therefore they don't actually like have to get on this bus to make this bell, and therefore it it creates a state of like later, 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 and the ADHD brain doesn't process later in discrete chunks. It is either right now or some other time. There's no like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. It's just, if it's not now, it's
yeah,
not now.
yeah. Although I'm curious, so when these kids have like alternative, um, and they let's just say like their circadian rhythm or they need to sleep, like if they sleep a few more hours, are they then easier to awake and get up and get going? Like if it's on their schedule, if it can be on their
Yeah.
schedule,
If they
which
have a
is
schedule is usually the question. If most of these kids don't have a schedule, that's the thing, is like one night they're going to bed at 10, the other night they're going to bed at 2 a.m. because they've been playing
yeah,
video games and they lost track of time. And it
yeah, I
is like,
gotcha.
yeah. Okay. The last thing for tonight, and I'm going to put you on the spot with this one.
Yeah.
Tell a funny story about Jason. I guess it has to be PG-13 if you can remember one, but um, can you remember a funny story about me from back in high school?
Oh my gosh.
Probably.
I feel like, the first thing I want to say is like part of me is like, um, I feel like I don't remember most of high school, but I feel like there's a million stories. And right now there's something coming with driver's ed. There's something you did that was wild in
With
driver's
my,
ed.
I don't know if we took driver's ed together.
I think we did it, Hank, right?
Did we?
I went to the
Oh,
Hebrew Academy.
yeah. Okay. I do remember that I had that little white car in my garage that before I turned 16 and was legal to drive it, that we had a little celebration at my house, and we took that thing out in the dark around the block. And we felt like we were such rebels driving this car before, around Waterbury Drive. I do
Yeah.
remember that.
Oh my God, that's so funny.
But
I
yeah.
remember, like, I know the minute we get off this call, I'm gonna think of things, but I just always remember you up for a little bit of adventure, right? Like
Yes.
just kind of pushing. We just had so many good times,
Yes.
just
We would just
hanging
go out and
out.
explore, go to the Witch's Brew, or go to like Adventure Park or whatever it was
Mets
called. And
game,
yeah,
something.
just get into stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I'll think of something and I'll make a video and send it to you. But
Okay.
yeah. Well, thank you for having.
Yeah.
I love what you're doing. I know I'm not supposed to interview you, but could you tell me briefly, like the transition from teacher to this, like
Yeah.
what inspired you to start your business?
Sure. Um, well, necessity is really, I think, kind of the answer. I worked at a high school up here in Vermont for the last 14 years. I created and ran the success program. When you came to
Mhm.
visit, I remember we sat and we talked a little bit. And so that was my bread and butter. I mean, I absolutely loved the success program. I gave it everything I had. I was doing a lot of trauma response work without
Hmm.
the necessary qualifications to be in that space. I mean, I responded well and I took care of kids when they were running away from home or their friends were overdosing, or I've
Amazing.
called DCF so many times,
Yeah.
and just done what I've had to do. And that basically over time wore on me and made me less good at my job. It made me
Yeah, I
less like
understand.
patient and tolerant. And for me, honestly, and I don't know, I'm sure my teacher friends are going to watch this, and I hope none of them feel called out. But if they do, that's probably because they deserve to be called out. Um, it
That's
got
for
to a
Jason, I know.
yeah, exactly. It got to a point. I was always very brutally honest. And I've learned to rein it in my older years, but still
Fair.
it's in there. But that was part of the problem. Was I would be like, I would get into confrontations with teachers where I'd be like, "Don't you understand? This kid is going home, doesn't have food on the table. They don't
Yeah.
care about your stupid English paper. I'm sorry. Like,
Yeah.
be kind, work with the kid, give him an extension, meet him for the flex block, like do what you have to do." And so I ended up getting into like a lot of like I was such an advocate for the kid that I would end up like not being a great colleague to my coworkers. And so got through that
Yeah.
and it came to a point where it was kind of abrupt how I left the high school. It just came to a head where I was like, you guys don't trust me, like then I should just go, you know? And they were like, yeah,
Mhm.
you should go. And so we both agreed. And then I was like, now what? You know, like
Yeah.
so I've always wanted to like take this thing that I built and figured out how to make it more widely available. I knew that I had a really good
Yeah.
model. I knew that it had success with hundreds and hundreds of kids, and I wanted to just like not have it
That's
just be at this
amazing.
one high school in Manchester. And
Yeah.
so I've brought it into this online world. I am currently still teaching fourth, fifth, and sixth grade at a small school in the
Hmm.
community here. It's called the Mountain School.
Yeah.
Like we have trails in the woods, and like I can take the kids out. It's like a lot of I love the place where I get to work and teach, but like that's kind of like the day job where I'm doing what
Yeah.
I have to do, and then this is like my pet project that I'm building and I'm so proud of, and hopefully this can be the thing that sustains me in the long run.
I have a
Is
feeling
doing
it
this.
will because it's
Yeah.
heart-centered, you know? Like
Yes.
that's where I feel like people are most successful.
Oh,
Um,
thank you.
and
That's
you know, in this story, like although it sounds unpleasant the way you went out of school, it sounds like for a good reason though. Like, I mean, that attunement to like, you know, when you start working in that world of like right trauma and struggle like right no one when they can't eat right can focus on anything else
yeah.
you know and survival I mean so to be such an advocate for those children you know I mean to be so attuned and so many people are not attuned I mean um you know, seems pretty admirable that you did what you could do.
Yeah,
But
thank you.
also understanding too, yeah, like you've got like you're putting your gifts out into the world in many different ways. And this
Yeah.
program looks awesome. And there's a lot of kids with the executive dysfunction, you know,
Yes.
and a lot of adults too. So good for
Especially
you.
these days. But yeah, the success program is still running at the high school. I'm still in
Cool.
touch with the new person who's running it, and he checks in and asks questions as needed.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, I know that I've created that thing that will then stay in perpetuity and help
Absolutely.
hundreds and hundreds of more kids. In the
Yeah.
meantime, I get to move into this space. And like the dream would be to be able to, you know, live and work remotely and live out of a camper and do my
Yes.
work anywhere I want, you know, and
Yes.
settle, go see the kids in college and then travel and just be able to have that sort of flexibility with that the internet should provide for us, you know.
And
But
why not? That's why we dream, right?
yes, dream on,
Yeah.
baby.
So anyway, thank you for having me. I can't
Yes,
wait to see
thank
your
you.
journey. I'm so
Thank you so
excited for
much,
you.
Fishy.
And if I figure out any good ways to get out of bed, I'll let you
All right, let me know.
know. Take care.
Bye, my
Bye.
friend.